under declaration and African economic integration rhetoric about African unity would remain empty and undermine our credibility in the eyes of our citizens. It is remarkable that even as our chief negotiators embarked on their task, the expectation of the entire continent, even the rest of the world, has been on them, and I must commend them since they discharged their duties with maturity, understanding, and with a spirit of compromise. As has been stressed before, these negotiations have not been like others we have had before with other partners outside the continent. Instead, the negotiations have been among brothers and sisters with a strong spirit of give and take. Allow me at this juncture, on behalf of you, to thank the Republic of Nigeria that has been chairing these negotiations throughout the entire exercise. By establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area through a commercially meaningful package of agreements, Africa is now poised to attract investments from both within Africa and with the world at large, and through jobs will expand their businesses, and African and be maintained, and those value chains will be linked to global value chains. The legal texts the legal texts have therefore gone through intense negotiations, and I believe our work this morning is to prepare for the Executive Council, and this work will be smooth, and as we prepare for submission to the legal instruments to be adopted by the Assembly. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are also happy to take note of the Transitional Implementation Work Program, in which remaining bulk issues built-in agenda, including the schedules of commitments under the protocols of trade in services and trade in goods. We urge our hard-working chief negotiators to continue these negotiations in the same spirit of solidarity and cooperation that they negotiated the main text. At the same time, I would like to urge all of us, the Permanent Representatives Committee and other participants here, the best efforts once the instruments are adopted by the Assembly to ensure that the CFTA agreement gets ratified as soon as possible so it can come into force without delay and begin implementation. Our people can no longer wait for our economic fortunes to change. We are the change agents, and we Africans have to create our own future, and nobody will do it for us. And I can only trust that a number of heads of states and governments will be signing the on Ministers of Justice have recommended us the legal text before us. I urge all of us to take note of these texts, comment for value addition, and forward them to the Executive Council with no further discussion and opening up. Because this is actually an implementation of the General Summit of our heads of states. We are here to implement it and not to discuss it. Lastly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to the CFTA-related exercise before us today, we also have another simple but very important item to consider as we prepare for our ministers' meeting. That one of the draft African Common Position on the post-Cotonou Agreement. Let me remind that in our last meeting on 9th of this month, we agreed that as we will define this agreement, Africa must unite and speak with a single voice, should strive also towards a single framework for a cooperation of a union to union or a continent to continent that is independent of the Caribbean and Pacific, that And apart from that, and can also have a direct partnership that can be sought with the Caribbean and Pacific on a sovereign basis. And lastly, let me remind that the existing bilateral and other agreements between states, regions, and the European Union to be preserved, strengthened. These are the things, the elements that we agreed upon in that meeting, and I believe that they will be guiding our decisions this afternoon. With those remarks, Excellencies, I wish you a happy and relaxed stay in Kigali and a fruitful deliberation, and I thank you all for your kind attention, and again, welcome to Kigali and Akwaba. Thank you. And next, let me call upon Excellency Ambassador Kwesi Kota on behalf of the chairperson of the Commission to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, and welcome to the beautiful, clean garden city of Kigali. Madam Chairperson of the PRC, Commissioners, Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chair of the African Union, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, I have the honor to welcome you all of you again to Kigali. And since he's unable to be here, I have the distinct honor of reading his speech, which I shall proceed to do. Following the inaugural session of our formal meetings held on the 7th March 2018, I'm once again honored to address the Permanent Representatives Committee, the linchpin of the African Union, on the occasion of the preparations for the extraordinary session of the African Union Assembly, convened for the purpose of executing the decision taken by our heads of state and government to lend a strong impetus to the implementation of one of our flagship projects, the Continental Free Trade Area. Kigali, a welcoming city, has always been clean, beautiful, and resplendent. This time, however, it has enhanced its splendor, providing us with a suitable working environment commensurate to the issues that bring us here. This, therefore, is an opportunity for me to express the gratitude of the African Union Commission to His Excellency Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda, and our distinguished chairperson of the African Union for his commitment, his determination, and his abilities to place Africa on a greater path of self-assertion on the international stage. I also like to take the opportunity to thank the government and the people of Rwanda for their fraternal and distinctly African welcome. Murakoze. Excellencies, ambassadors, the extraordinary session of the Assembly of the Union, the preparations for which you have been working on since Addis Ababa, refers specifically to Africa taking charge of its destiny, making sure that her voice resonates from a position of unity and strength, rooted in the effective implementation of projects of continental dimension that contribute to its development, especially the consolidation of its integration and unity. As a key organ responsible for starting the decision-making process within the African Union, yours is the heavy duty of laying the groundwork through the preliminary consideration of all working documents, and therefore of providing the Executive Council with guidance on the way forward in the consideration of matters to be submitted to the heads of state and government. The PRC, therefore, is a particularly valuable organ. With the launch of the Continental Free Trade Area, one of Africa's flagship projects, alongside a single air transport market and the free movement of people and goods, we are also challenged by the urgent need to develop an African common position on the Cotonou Agreement post-2020. Our continent is therefore at the crossroads. Which path shall we choose? That of maintaining the status quo is clearly unacceptable. What we need to do is take decisions to have a real positive impact on our populations. The freedom of movement of all Africans within the continent is ensured, settlement in everywhere in Africa for all her sons and daughters, as well as offering, in the final analysis, fulfilling and promising living conditions for our youth in a bid to reverse the migratory flows. Your Excellencies, things are indeed changing, and in this dynamic, the PRC remains an essential player in this desired change. Indeed, whether it is the preliminary work on the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area, the draft protocols finalized by the Specialized Technical Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, which you are called upon to consider, or whose consideration is an item on your agenda, you have, during your respective sessions, devoted to these issues and shown a convergence of views that largely transcends the hesitations, procrastination, and concerns observed every now and again. With regard to the Continental Free Trade Area, we welcome the efforts of all the actors under the effective leadership of His Excellency Mahamadou Issoufou, President of the Republic of Niger, the designated champion of the Continental Free Trade Area. I therefore urge you to conduct your deliberations in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, which has always guided your practice in the discharge of your duties. As for the draft Common African Position, the extraordinary session of the Executive Council held in Addis Ababa in October 2017 decided to set up an inclusive task force comprising the PRC, the Commission, the REX, and African ambassadors accredited to Brussels and Geneva, as well as the permanent representative of the African Union in these two cities. The task force held its first session at the headquarters of the African Union last March. The deliberations, which focused on the consideration of two documents, one prepared by the Commission and the other developed jointly by the group of African ambassadors and the African Union permanent representation in Brussels, concluded with rewarding exchanges. Of course, regional and national concerns, which are otherwise understandable in the harmonization position, considering the diversity of the legal status to which some member states are already subject, were raised by certain delegations. However, all participants recognized the need for a common position. I would like, if I may, dwell on the following 3 points. 1, the African common position must be inspired by Agenda 2063, which is hinged on the key principles of African unity, integration, and sustainable development, among others, and the reconciliation of the 3 ACP blocks, Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific. These principles will obviously have to be supplemented by appropriate financing and governance mechanisms that preserves the continent's major interests. 2, the African common position should be understood as a general framework that outlines the scope within which negotiations will take place. It is such a general framework that we must decide here in Kigali. 3, the negotiators will subsequently be responsible for ironing out with the European side all the details relating not only to achievements, and in particular the specific agreements that some of our member states have concluded with the EU, besides the Cotonou Convention, but also the continuation of the objectives set out in Agenda 2063 in strict compliance with our basic principles, namely unity, integration, structural transformation of the African countries, and sustainable development, as well as shared prosperity. The importance of the African composition on the post-2020 ACP is implicit in the configuration of the agenda, which, while being that of an extraordinary session, has not been limited to a traditional single point. It has been broadened to include this issue because of its relevance and the urgent need for the African side to have its negotiating tool, like the European Union, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, which are already up to date in their position. So, Your Excellencies, I'd like to conclude where I started by once again reiterating the indispensable role of the Permanent Representatives Committee as an interface organ between the African Union Commission and the member states. The PRC, in its interactions with respective capitals, a role of explaining and enlightening states about the multilateral of which the African Union, as an intergovernmental organization, is the theater. It is this constant back and forth movement between the PRC, the member states, and the Commission that contributes to building a shared perception and understanding of geopolitical and economic issues by these three main actors at the service of one and the same cause, the emergence of Africa and the affirmation of its geopolitical personality. Thanks to the mutual understanding to which we must all remain committed, we could, to use a familiar expression, make the omelette of the construction of the Africa we want by breaking the eggs of our immediate interests against the higher, medium, and long-term gains. While wishing you fruitful deliberations, Your Excellencies, I'd like to thank you all for your kind and polite attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson, for that profound statement on behalf of the Chairperson of the Commission. And now, Excellencies, I wish to draw your attention to the program after the opening remarks from the chair of the PRC and the deputy chairperson of the commission. We need to adopt the entire program. A short while we'll have a group photo. After which we come back for a closed session in which we will be considering the report of the Specialized Technical Committee of the Justice and Legal Affairs on the African Continental Free Trade Area legal instruments, and also we will be considering the draft African Common Position on the ACP post-Cotonou. And that one, those two items will take us up to the lunch time between 1 and, that should take us up to 1 p.m. You may notice that the lunch time is a bit extended, is to give the Secretariat opportunity to clean up the documents after our deliberations, such that we will be reconvening back here at 4 p.m. to consider and adopt the draft report of the PRC, and also to look at the draft agendas of the meetings of the extraordinary session of the Executive Council and that one of the Assembly of the African Union. Briefly, that is our agenda today. And since it is an extraordinary summit that we are preparing for, I accept no AOB. And with that, I don't know whether any member wishes to say anything on the agenda. If any member wishes to ask for floor, please use the electronic system so that we can identify you easily. I see Kenya and Algeria.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving this delegation the floor. Let me start on behalf of my delegation by thanking the government of Rwanda through you, Chair, for the very warm hospitality that has been accorded to all of us since our arrival here. Chair, let me also recognize the presence of the Deputy Chairperson and the Commissioners present. Chair, as we appreciate the work that has of the AMOT does not feature on the agenda, thereby meaning that it will not find space in the Executive Council meeting slated for the 19th. This delegation would like to suggest that this AMOT report deserves attention by the Executive Council for various reasons, that it is, to a large extent, it informs the report by the Specialized Technical Committee on the legal instruments for the Continental Free Trade Area. And secondly, that it has legal, structural, and financial implications, and thereby meaning that it must then therefore be considered by the Executive Council. So that is the request by this delegation, that this report therefore be tabled at this session so that it can find its way into the Executive Council agenda. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya, for that point. Now the floor goes to Algeria.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, tout d'abord, ma délégation souhaiterait vous exprimer.
I would like to express to you its thanks and gratitude for all the hospitality and welcome that has been extended to us by the government of Rwanda since our arrival. I would like to commend the holding of this extraordinary session in your beautiful country, Madam Chairperson. There is no need to tell you that you can rely on the support of the Algerian delegation and in order to submit to the Executive Council documents and also recommendations which will be useful for our extraordinary summit. My delegation would like to raise a practical item, Madam Chairperson. We've heard what you said as concerns the inclusion of an item on AOB, that is any other business. So my delegation would like to ask you, how are we, and at which point are we going to tackle the logistical issues, especially as At what time of our deliberation are we going to do that? You will remember, Madam Chairperson, that during one of our meetings of the PRC, the Algerian delegation and other delegations have raised the issue of the participation of ministers and particularly trade ministers there is a great limitation of participation by heads of state and government. The ambassador of Nigeria has well explained it, and precisely to involve other members of the government who could attend on behalf of each member state. So we're very attentive on what you're going to decide in order to allow to raise our concerns in this respect. So we are ready to follow your directives in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Algeria. And now the floor goes.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And I would like to thank the Rwandan government's hospitality and in this beautiful city of Kigali. Madam Chairperson, I see on the agenda item number 4, the draft position, African position on ACP. And I would like to draw your attention that we received this document yesterday at 9 p.m. Prior to boarding the plane coming to Kigali. So I would like to suggest that we have a little bit more time, Madam Chairperson, to look into these documents, and would like to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenya, Algeria, and Tunisia for your remarks and comments and ideas. On Kenya's idea to have the report of the trade ministers, after consulting the legal counsel and the SG, because we thought it was presented to the STC on legal affairs for information, we thought this was a basis of their discussions. And we thought it would come under the items of the extraordinary session of the Executive Council, not our PRC discussions. But if you wish to bring it here for our information, we don't have any problem with that. So either we can agree to have it as an added item for our information, please note discussion, and then we will agree on how to put it on the agenda of the Executive Council, which we are going to discuss later. Second, regarding logistical issues that Algeria raised, the SG was planning to say something after, when we came back after the group photo, before we commenced our substantive session. So maybe we can wait until that time for any clarification or any detail of the logistical issues. Then Tunisia, regarding the documents the documents were distributed. And remember, this is not even the first time we are looking at this document. The updated document is informed by the comments and the recommendations that were given during our meeting of the joint working group that we had on 5th of this month, on 9th of this month. And we believe that this is just an improved document that we already had. And I'm told that is going to be even distributed here, hard copies shortly. So I think with those comments, we can go for our break. But before going, let's adopt the program. Swaziland.
Thank you, Chair. Though I thought that I was following Egypt, but nevertheless I will take advantage of the opportunity present. Chair, at the very beginning, we wish to assure you our total support as you captain our ship. We had requested the floor to identify ourselves with the proposal by our dear sister from Kenya, but now that you have responded, we wish to agree and support your proposal in respect of including the report and taking note of the report in our deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Swaziland. Egypt.
Thank you very much, Chair. Allow me first to thank the Rwandese government through yourself for the hospitality that we have benefited since our arrival to this beautiful city of Kigali, and of course to recognize the President of the DCP and all commissioners here present today. Chair, my intervention goes in the same line with what my sister from Kenya have said. I just want to add maybe something on what my colleagues from Kenya and Swaziland have said, is that the STC Justice have discussed the report of Ahmed from a legal point of view, but it was not discussed from the policy and substantial point of view. So that's why maybe it is very important that should be added to the agenda. Just wanted to add these 2 points, and I would like to thank you for your understanding.
Thank you, Egypt. I think we are having a trend here. This is how the program is going to proceed. We are going to have a group photo after here. And then second, we'll take our coffee break. And when we come back, the SG will take us through the logistical and administrative issues. And then after, we'll have the first item, we'll have a report on the Ministers of Trade meeting, just taking note of the report of the Trade Ministers meeting, and then followed by the consideration of the report of the STC of Justice and Legal Affairs, and then that will be followed by consideration of the draft African Common Position on the SCP post-Cotonou. And each report, especially these two, will be discussed. We'll have enough time to discuss. And that will take us to the lunch break, which will be extended to give the Secretariat like an hour to clean up the documents. And then we come back here at 4:30, because now the time is being eaten into by this extra item. And then we consider our report, and also we look through the agendas of the upcoming meetings. Is that fine? Agenda adopted. So let's go for a group photo and our coffee break, and then we come back here in 15 minutes. And that will be 10:30. 10:30 we'll be coming back here. Thank you. Excellencies, ambassadors, we are going to pass here. This is where we're going for. On my left, yes, for our photo.